Hey everybody, and welcome to our discussion of Chapter 17 in your PHE 230 textbook. What we're going to talk about today is anaerobic exercise prescription. So whatever you go through to do a resistance training prescription, there are 7 things you need to be considerate of. Those are going to be performing a needs analysis of your athlete, your exercise selection, so which exercises are you going to choose, how often will you train with that athlete, how will you order those particular activities, what will your reps and sets look like, your overall volume, and then what rest periods are you going to use for that particular athlete. So let's break each of these down individually. So when you go in to do a needs analysis, when you look at this, the first thing you need to do is evaluate the sport. So what sport is this athlete doing? What are the requirements to be good at this sport? So for example, a female soccer player, we'd expect them to have high amounts of endurance, a fair amount of agility, and some sprint speed associated with playing that sport well. This is going to be very different than, say, a professional shot putter. They don't need a ton of endurance, but they need to be incredibly strong, incredibly agile, and incredibly explosive. I would write 2 very different prescriptions for those individuals. Next, you're going to look at that particular athlete. Are they experienced at their sport? Are they relatively new? Then what is their previous injury status? Where is their fitness levels at? Are they experienced in, say, Olympic lifts and compound lifts like squat and bench press? Or are they strictly bodyweight athletes? So you need to take some time to see what it requires to be successful in your sport, but also what is your athlete capable of doing. After you've kind of done your needs analysis through testing and observation, you're going to go into your exercise selection. Your exercise selections, you need to ask yourself 3 questions. 1, what does the athlete need to do? This is why we do the needs analysis first. Second, you're going to ask, what does that athlete know? So if, say, I go through my needs analysis, let's say we have a shot putter again, and we know that they need to be powerful, explosive athletes, but they've never lifted before in their life. I'm going to need to teach them how to lift explosively. And I may take some baby steps getting in there. That's going to be very different than, say, I have a very experienced shot putter who's had 12 years of experience in the weight room. That'd be like a professional athlete. I don't need to spend as much time teaching. Your final requirement with your exercise selection is, what do I have to work with? This is looking at your equipment needs. What equipment do you have available to you? What equipment will you need? So I know a lot of coaches that are on the high school level have to get creative with how they train. So let's say we're training now a cross-country team, and they don't have time or access to the weight room. Well, you can still do strength training with them. Usually things that are portable, like resistance bands, kettlebells, lots of bodyweight exercises. If you don't have access, you can still train somebody with resistance training. You just have to get creative with it. All right, so exercise selection, what do they need to be able to do? What do they know? And what do I have access to? This will kind of shape how I choose my exercises to train. Next, you're going to look at how frequently are you going to train these athletes. This is determined by 2 things. First, the experience of that particular athlete. So a very experienced athlete can handle high levels of training, sometimes even bouts of 4 programmed days a week. On the other hand, a relative newbie can maybe only handle 2. Then you also have to look at where are you at in your sports season. So if I'm going through the conditioning cycle, then I can spend some more time in the weight room. However, if I am in the middle of the season, I need to focus on being a good athlete, not necessarily a good lifter. After we've gone and figured out our training frequency, we then need to figure out exercise order. So basic understandings here, you're going to go from big muscles to small muscles, multi-joint exercises to single joint exercises, and then you're going to go for more complex, higher fatiguing exercises into lower, less complex, more simple, less fatiguing exercises. And how you choose to split that is up to you. So if I want to do a full body day with an athlete, I would pick my more complex lifts like a clean, a snatch, maybe a squat, and then I would go to more simple exercises, so like a leg extension, a walking lunge, Walking lunges are still multi-joint exercises, so be careful with that. But I'm going to go from more complex to simple, more fatiguing to less fatiguing, big to small. If you're wanting to do a single muscle group at a time, you can do it that way. This is how we get splits like back and biceps, chest and triceps, leg day, back day. You can split that way. You can do a very common one I've seen also is a strength day and a power day, where you have one day where you're trying to be really fast and explosive, and one day you're just trying to get strong. You can also split by a full upper body day, a full lower body day, or you can do all of them at once. And then I would suggest alternating an upper body exercise by a lower body exercise. So exercise order matters significantly, but there are a million different ways to split it up. The next two concepts are going to be your training load and your reps and your volume. Even though these are two distinct concepts, we tend to pair them together because they're controlled by very similar things. Mainly a spectrum. This is going to be based again on your athlete's training experience, but also what are you trying to train? I'm going to show a picture here in a second into the lovely slideshow. It'll pop up all pretty like this. And what you saw in that picture is there's a spectrum. So strength and power tends to be very high intensity, but low reps. And as we kind of move into hypertrophy, it's kind of the intermediate between the two, and endurance is on the far end of the spectrum, with very high repetitions, very low intensity. So these are all going to kind of interplay on a spectrum, again, based on your athlete's training experience and where they're at in their season on what I am working on in particular. And then the last thing you need to consider when writing your exercise prescription is your rest periods, right? Again, it's going to be determined on the athlete's fitness, their injury status, and their particular sports season. So if somebody is coming back from an injury, they're going to tend to be less fit. It's going to take them time to build back up to our understanding of repetitions and intensity. If somebody is really burned out because they're near the end of their season, they may need more rest. If I'm trying to build endurance, I may intentionally make their rest periods lower than standard in order to kind of build up an aerobic component with their anaerobic component. So with all of that in mind, hopefully you can take this information and spread it into your own programming. Until next time, have a good day.